Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. Like always, I'm your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by the boys, Kyle Lynch and Matt Beck. And this week, don't adjust your headphones, whatever you're listening through. Yes, we're going to talk about fucking Madden. I can't believe I got those two to play it. They know nothing about football, but you know what? The boys were good sports. Fun there. They were good sports, and they gave it a try. So let's talk about Madden first before we get into the game that all three of us were really excited for, or really rather expansion. But let's talk about Madden. Kyle, you played it alongside me first because we obviously game share through PlayStation. So Madden, one of the first. Is this the first Madden you've ever played? Actually, for both of you, I know Matt, that's probably your first Madden, right?
It is.
So Kyle, what about you? Was that your first Madden or no? I couldn't remember if you told me or not.
It actually is not. My first Madden was on the GameCube. Madden, I want to say it was like Madden 04, 05. Me and my family used to play it all the time, dude. That and Tiger Woods PGA Tour, dude. The two sports
that's a lot of years, man. That's a lot of years in between playing Madden.
Oh,
I can't imagine how much different it looks now, obviously, compared to the game. The first time I ever played Madden was on the PS2. So, I mean, it looked good for a PS2 game, but let's talk about Madden 22. It's a franchise that's been scrutinized a lot, but let's I think all three of us we enjoyed what we played of it. We all played it on PS5. Kyle, what did you think about it?
Honestly, it is. I would say I'm still a relatively new player to sports games and to the Madden franchise. And I gotta say, going into it, I wanted to be as unbiased as possible because obviously this is not really my field of game. And I played, I think, the opening game, which was the Chiefs versus the Bucks, and then
Yep.
I played a game after that, and I was hooked. I was like, wow, I'm actually enjoying this game. Partially because I was actually scoring some pretty good touchdowns, but I really enjoyed this game. I think that it looks, the one thing I really talked about with Rusty was the transitions. I thought that they are so clean and they happen so fast. Like you'll have a play and then they'll show you a replay of something you just did, and it transitions just like that. It's insane how fast it is, and it really shows off, the hardware on these new systems. I gotta say, the face of the franchise, I think that's the story mode. It was actually, it's kind of, generic, sports story, but it's pretty fun. I like that I was able to create my own character, and you get to start, from high school, and then you get into college, and then you get drafted by the NFL, and it's a lot of fun because it actually teaches you, how to play, and I wasn't just going into games just getting my ass whooped over and over and over again, and it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I think that I told you guys what I was surprised a lot by, especially when I was just kind of what I do with Madden and what I do with really every sports game every year is I kind of gauge what people think about it early on that had early access to it. So typically, YouTubers or streamers, I'll typically look at what they're saying about it to get an idea of how worth it the game is going to be on launch day. Because Madden 21 was rough. It had a very, very rough launch. They clearly used assets from Madden 20 that were in the game that still said Madden 20 on them. So the launch was fairly rough for Madden 21. And I heard a lot of people say that this year's game felt kind of like it was just as rough and that it almost wasn't ready to be released, that players weren't very responsive when you moved the stick or when you tried to maneuver to go make a tackle or to make a play on a ball. And they said that it was believe it or not, I don't know, you two won't believe this, there were a lot of people that said the frame rates were very choppy. And so I don't know how big the patches were that got released, for the day as far as day one or day zero patches went. But I couldn't help but think that most people were only playing on like the PS4 or the Xbox One version. I couldn't help to think maybe this is just last gen because on the PS5 I've experienced none of those issues. The responsiveness has been great. The gameplay for Madden, in my opinion, is the best it's been in a long, long time. The last Madden that I legitimately enjoyed was probably Madden 17. And even then, I had it for about a month and then I took it back inevitably. So it's, I don't know where all the criticism are coming from. It's not a perfect game, but I also don't think any sports game is. I mean, like Kyle said, face of the franchise, pretty generic. It's 2K has been doing story modes for a long time in their My Career mode, and face of the franchise is kind of similar. It's kind of generic. It's kind of basic. It's not really anything special, but it's good enough, and it's good, I think, at teaching you the game. And Kyle, I know that's what you told me, is that it taught you the ways of the game. Matt, your first Madden. I know that me and you spent a lot of time on it on Thursday night, just kind of essentially boot camping it for this episode, so that you could essentially learn the game a little bit, play a couple games, and get everything down. Tell me, how user friendly do you think this game is in terms of new players?
So coming off from this being my very first Madden game, this game was very, new user friendly. Actually, I do owe a lot of I do owe a lot of it to you, Rusty. You've been a great coach for me playing this game. Um, I did not really understand it that well when it came to the defensive or being offensive. I was like having issues like selecting which to choose from right before the kickoff. Uh, and I'm still not very educated in the field of football. Normally, when football's on the TV, when I was growing up, I tuned out. But I got a much better understanding of how the game works when it comes to like how the field works. And I would definitely say I'm still a little not so sure how the plays work because there's so many to choose from. Like I can't even really remember. I just know there's like run, pass, like there's these different ones, and I I still enjoyed it. Like I know nothing about football, but I still had a good time playing it and learning how the mechanics work and um taking something like as it's old of a sport as football, which a lot of people are, it's like the number one sport in America, and getting to kind of see from their point of view like what's entertaining about it. And I think Madden does that really well, and it can introduce people who don't know nothing about football and to learning about it and maybe finding interest in it. And I'm very glad that I took the chance on playing it, just like I did with MLB. Um, Growing up, I've never played sports games. I've never really played sports either. So I had a lot of fun learning how it works, how it plays, and um, you know, just expanding the types of games that I've played because I've never playing a sports game. I didn't think I'd ever would give them a chance, but I'm really glad that I did. I'm glad that I've opened up my viewpoint on the genres of games to play, and definitely would maybe even look into other sports games like FIFA even. Just I with there being so many different types of sports with these games, like just want to jump into them and expand how many types of sports games I play.
FIFA is probably the one franchise I will tell you probably don't need to dabble in because it's not been good for a little over 5 or 6 years. But I'm also not a big soccer fan, so that's worth saying there. I think a lot of people like FIFA. FIFA is very pay to win, and I think that's one of the biggest criticisms with one of the biggest modes in this version of Madden, just like it is every year with Madden Ultimate Team or MUT. Uh, it's very pay to win, and it's hard to feel like it's not pay to win because it's essentially fantasy football. You pick a team that you want to represent, on your profile. Me, it'd probably be the Titans since I'm a huge Titan fan, and you essentially buy packs of cards digitally on there, and the players you get are the players you can plug into your lineup and use in the game. Well, the problem is the more money you spend, the better packs you can open, the better players you get. Madden Ultimate Team has been pay to win for a long, long time, but so has my team on 2K. So has Hockey Ultimate Team on NHL. You could say the same thing just about on MLB The Show with their Ultimate Team. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. And I know it's possible to have success without spending a lot of money. I've done that on a lot of these games. But it feels it's a little cheap when you are just playing the game to have fun. You play online against somebody, and they've clearly got the best players, the 99 overall players that are they're just OP. They're better than your players, and That's essentially why you end up losing. Is yeah, you might know how to use your players better, but they're 99 overalls. They're faster. They're stronger. They're better than you. So hockey. God damn. Anyways, Madden Ultimate Team. You know what? I'm not even gonna edit that out. I don't even care. But Madden Ultimate Team, very pay to win. But I think we can agree. Rest of the game as a whole, very very solid. So, Kyle, would you recommend this game? I think we know Matt answered this point. I think he would. Would you recommend this to a big football fan? Would you recommend it and say, hey, I know it's $60, $70. Would you recommend someone, buying this game?
Oh, 100%. As a newcomer, essentially, I enjoyed this. If you're a fan of Madden, if you've played the previous Madden games, I'm telling you, this one is definitely a must-have, especially on the next-gen consoles. If you have a PS5, get it on the PS5. I promise you, it is beautiful. I 100% recommend this game.
So speaking of the PS5, let's talk about our next game, or again, as I mentioned earlier, expansion, because Ghost of Tsushima's director cut came out a week ago, and with it came the Iki Island expansion that adds, I think people said roughly, when you factor in the exploration story, all that, it's about the same length as the Izuhara section. I hope I pronounced that right. I probably didn't, but it's about the same length as that. It adds about 8 to 10 hours, and the expansion ends up being about $30 in total. So as a whole, I think we've all three really enjoyed this added story expansion. It's added a couple new wrinkles to the gameplay. Iki Island itself is a really big new area to explore. There's a lot there. The Kyle, obviously, one thing we did was we found all the PlayStation armors with the Bloodborne, God of War, and Shadow of the Colossus armors. I think Matt, you probably found them too at this point. What were our overall thoughts about that? What did we think about this added story of going back into the footsteps of Jin Sakai, taking on the Mongols this time in a new area with a whole new antagonist?
I really enjoyed that they brought in a new enemy type. I know
Yes.
at the beginning we were kind of frustrated trying to figure out why none of our stances were working against the proper enemies that we were going up against until we realized that they were getting buffed by the shamans. And so you had to go and kill the shamans first before you could take out, any of the other enemies. Otherwise, you're gonna be attacking them over and over and over, and they don't budge. You cannot stun them whatsoever. And I thought it was really interesting because when I was playing the game initially, I liked to do a lot of stealth, and so it kind of changed up because I would like to go and take out the heavy guys first, and then I'd try to take out the ranged guys, and then I'd just, go and stand off whoever's left. But this kind of changed it up for me because I had to start, finding where the shamans were, and usually they were just in the middle of everyone, and it was so hard to get to them. So I really, really liked that it made me think a lot more. It made me really, kind of re-experience the game in this new expansion. The story was fantastic. I think that, it wasn't too long, it wasn't too short. I think it was just the right length. And the final boss fight, amazing.
Amazing.
I have no words. That boss fight was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of those 100%. That this is a really good story expansion. It opens up a little bit of a that I think just about every story based DLC in any game has, where it's like it's taking place on Iki Island. When the Mongols initially invade Tsushima, and I brought up the point of like how in the world did Jin and Yuna and the entire crew that you're with on the island, how did you not ever hear about the island story? It opens a very very weird can of worms there, but willing to look past that. I love the story expansion. Like you mentioned, the final boss fight against the eagle, awesome. I thought that was one of my that's my favorite moment in the game. Period. Right now is that final boss fight because it was the right mix of story and gameplay and getting good as well. That boss fight was not easy, not an easy boss fight whatsoever. I remember whenever the eagle actually landed a blow against me, it took down a healthy chunk, a very very big chunk of my health. So it was not an easy fight at all. Matt, one thing that I think me and you agreed on though, in regards to this story, it can sometimes get a little irritating with how often the eagle kind of cuts in randomly during missions, like after she poisons you and you kind of have those visions that she puts in your head. She's talking to you through the hallucinations. The trope kind of got old a little bit at one point. But talk about your thoughts on the story, Matt. What did you think about all this new stuff we learned?
Starting off for the story, I love the fact that this expansion didn't necessarily try to make it feel like a brand new, a brand new game. I mean, yes, you are, interacting with similar characters, but also introduces a bunch of new characters as well that all, have interesting storylines with new side quests with other characters. Because this is one of the things that Ghost of Tsushima did really well, were side quests, and it continues on that with this expansion. My favorite thing as far as the story goes is the fact that in the main game you don't really learn much about your father.
Yep.
You don't really know much about him. You get the flashback cutscene where it shows a young Jin watching his father being killed, and we didn't know that happened on Iki Island because at the time we didn't even know the existence of this place. So they expanded on that and kind of went into further detail as to what led to the death of I'm gonna say his name right,
I think it's Kazumasa. Is that Kazumasa? I think that's what that is.
Yeah, that led to his death, and it really explores the relationship between Jin and his father. And you actually see that his father's a bit of a hard ass on him. And most of Jin's best memories come from his mother. And they introduced a lot of interesting things to develop into the story about Jin's mother, like how he talks about you'll find these sections of the game where you play the flute, which has a really nice use of the controller where you tilt
Yes.
up and down to play the flute. You'll find cat shrines and deer shrines, and Jin will kind of go into a little monologue about stuff involving him and his mom, and you just see that peaceful side to him. Whereas you'll find these sections in the game that kind of do like a little flashbacks with your father, and you'll see how hard he was on Jin leading up to him becoming a samurai. Um, and I love the fact that we got to expand into that and we get a much better understanding as to what caused Jin to hesitate so much, watching his father being killed by the what do they call the Raiders? Or yeah.
Yeah.
So and then with the eagle, yeah, I'm gonna go straight back onto that right quick with the eagle. That was very entertaining, especially because Kyle said it. He likes to play stealth, and you're trying to sneak around in Mongol bases, camps, and to if you're playing if you play that way, but the eagle constantly interrupts you. It's like no matter what you're doing, could be just climbing something, could be riding your horse. The eagle constantly that poison kicks in, and then you're just hearing the eagle's voice, and it happens way too much. Like I'm just trying to play this game. I don't want to hear you talk. Like girls, chill, calm down. Um, and this game also uses the DualSense very well. Haptic feedbacks are very well used with the
Yes.
grapple hook now. You will R2. You'll find like these boards that you want to pull down in order to access crevices in order to get further into the areas you're exploring. And I like the fact that this game feels so natural to the PlayStation 5, even with the horses galloping. You can just feel that in the controller. So love that everything didn't feel tacked on with the controller. It just felt so natural. Um, and going back to the combat is another thing I praise Ghost of Tsushima for. Having to relearn everything because it's been about a year since I played Ghost of Tsushima, like all the way through. So I had to relearn the stances and everything. But it's so easy to learn, and I just got straight back into it. Like I never took a break from playing the game. Um, but this is definitely worth the $20. Technically, it's $30 altogether because it's $10 for the upgrade, $20 for the expansion. But this is definitely well worth the money, and I'm super happy that we got to continue with Ghost of Tsushima and that we're not having to wait years for whatever comes next. Because I think that this game is so brilliant, it's so well done, it's so much fun. It was so great to go back into that world, and they also added some new legends, so you got new gear, and then with the upgrade to the horse, because now the horse actually has some use in combat, which Absolutely love that. It feels so satisfying when you're just mauling down a bunch of Mongols on the horse. So, uh, I'm super glad that we got this expansion.
Yeah, I think that one thing for me that this expansion did a lot better than the main game did was I thought the writing was much more accurate to what was going on screen. It was the writing as a whole in terms of dialogue, in terms of just how the story flowed. The writing was a whole lot better this time around. One of my biggest complaints in the base game was that Jin's uncle, Lord Shimura, he was very poorly written in my opinion because he talked about how Jin would be teaching people to fear the ghost when that wasn't really the case. People weren't really fearful of the ghost at any point. So I think that this was much more well written. I thought that as a whole, I thought the Eagle was a better protagonist than both Lord Shimura. Spoiler alert: if you haven't played the freaking game, uh, or Khoten Khan. I thought Khoten Khan was a good antagonist. I liked the Eagle more personally. I thought the Eagle was more maniacal and just more charismatic than the Khan was. I thought that the Khan just kind of lacked a little bit of emotion in the performance. That's just me. But the writing is really what sealed it. And everything Matt just said about the story, learning more about Jin's father, realizing that, he was an ass. He wasn't a good person. And the game, the base game before doesn't really portray him as a great person, but it doesn't also portray him as a bad person. And the thing is, and one of my favorite parts in this DLC is when Jin is talking to one of the raiders, one of the leaders, Tenzo, new character who is awesome, by the way. Uh, he's talking to him and he's telling him about his father's death. And, there's a very specific line of dialogue he has where he goes, I saw my father die in front of me. I had the chance to stop him or to stop it from happening, but I didn't. And I thought it was very interesting that he said, I didn't, not I couldn't. Because saying I didn't says, you could have very easily stopped it, but you chose not to. And I think, especially with how the story wraps up, and again, play this for yourself so you can see it firsthand, how the story wraps up, that tells me that Jin believed that that was what his father deserved. And I love how the ending of this DLC is about taking down the Eagle, but it's also about Jin learning to come to terms with his past. Coming to terms with the fact that he let his father die, coming to terms with the fact that his father was not a good human being, and that it ends up being about forgiveness in Jin forgiving his father and also forgiving himself for making that decision in that moment. So I think that this is a very well-written DLC. It's absolutely worth the money. The PS5 upgrade is gorgeous. It was already a beautiful game to look at, but my God, it looks even better now. Smooth, buttery smooth, 60 frames per second. This game, really, I thought it was a great game last year. I thought that it was deservingly in the conversation for Game of the Year. And as I've told Kyle, who, when we did our Game of the Year rankings last year, if not for Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima probably would have gotten my Game of the Year vote. Would have gotten my Game of the Year vote. And it probably would have won Game of the Year. Even though saying that, it would have probably gone to fucking Animal Crossing when it didn't deserve it. But main point here, it was a great game last year. It's an even better game now thanks to that upgrade, thanks to Iki Island. It adds a whole lot of story. And I think that anybody that likes this game or enjoyed this game, you 100% should play this expansion because it's fantastic. But that's going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at Side Mission Pod. You can follow me and Matt as well because Kyle, thankfully, only runs the Side Mission Twitter and doesn't have his own. We've tried that out. It didn't work. But be sure to give all of us a follow on there. And if you want to check out some of our older episodes, check out newstalk949.com on the internet or YouTube for some of our even older episodes. Past that, just look up Side Mission Podcast. I said it in the last episode. I'll say it again. Just look for the account that's got minimal followers. You'll find us. It's pretty simple. But for the boys, Kyle Lynch, Matt Beck, I'm Rusty Alice. Thanks for listening.